Good afternoon. It's great to see so many people here today. I'm Katie Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of the Denver Public Library Friends Foundation. And it is my pleasure to welcome you here today in this beautiful Parkview event space as part of the Central Library renovation. So we're so thrilled to see so many faces here today. Thank you so much for joining us for this special conversation with Dr. Lisa Damour. We're so proud that we can bring authors and thought leaders like Lisa Damour to Denver, and we couldn't do it without all of your support. So thank you very much to all of you in the room and to our generous supporters and sponsors for today's event. Now let's talk about why we're here. Dr. Lisa Damour is one of the leading voices on adolescent mental health today. She's the author of 3 New York Times bestsellers, including The Emotional Lives of Teenagers, and she recently served as a consultant to Pixar on the new film Inside Out 2. Dr. Damour is a trusted contributor to CBS News and the New York Times, co-host of the Ask Lisa podcast, and a global advisor on youth mental health for organizations like UNICEF. She maintains a clinical practice and has dedicated her career to helping us better understand what kids and teens really need to thrive. This afternoon is also a homecoming for Dr. Damour, a proud graduate of Denver's own Manual High School. She returned to her hometown in 2023 to speak at our, Manual High School. We got some cheers out there. Woo! She returned to her hometown in 2023 to speak at our Sam Gary Branch Library. We're so delighted to welcome Lisa back to Denver and to the Central Library. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Lisa Damour.
Okay, well, it's lovely to be here. It feels like this is your life. I've got my folks here. I hope some thunderbolts in the room. Yes, are we representing here? I have dear Eden, who I first met when she was a freshman in college, and I was in my first year of graduate school, and I was her TA, and this is 31 years ago, and we've stayed friends all that time. And who here has read Untangled? It's okay if you haven't. Maybe you remember at the start of that book, I talked about why I became a psychologist. And I became a psychologist because we have a dear family friend, I gotta get together, who we were all in London at the same time, and she was training with Anna Freud, and I was deeply fascinated by what she would do, and I write in Untangled about spending time in her flat and asking her about children. She's here too. So it's really, as you can tell, very moving and meaningful for me to be here. And I am so glad that you are all here. I am so grateful to the Denver Library Friends Foundation for pulling this together, grateful to the sponsors who have made this possible and are supporting the library, and above all, grateful to all of you who are here because you care about teenagers. Now, I love teenagers. I have always loved teenagers. And I am so grateful to have a career, thanks in no small part to Carla, that has let me care for them all this time. And we now find ourselves in a really interesting moment where suddenly everybody's talking and thinking about teenagers, which is by and large a wonderful, wonderful thing. And this, I will say, accelerated very much through the pandemic and has continued. And I will say also, in some ways, much to my surprise. Like, I thought that we would talk about them a lot and then people would move on, but we haven't moved on. But we need to do a really good job with this. Our teenagers need us to get this right, and they need us to get it right now. And so that's why I decided I would title this talk, What Teens Need Now. Like, where are we with them today? How do we help them during challenging times? So my plan is to talk through a bunch of things I'm thinking about exactly what teenagers need right here, right now. And then I will leave time at the end for questions. What I've missed, the yeah buts, the what about this, And then I will turn it back over to the wonderful organizers of this event. So starting with what teens need now, one thing they need are adults who see past the headlines. So as you know, if you are reading any media anywhere, starting in the pandemic and continuing through, there are a lot of very alarming headlines about teenagers. And I greet this with really mixed feelings. No one is happier than I am that we are talking about adolescent mental health as much as we are. At the same time, the headlines are persistently alarming. They are persistently scary. They are not all wrong. And yet I will say, even outlets like the New York Times, where I have a lot of respect and love having a lot of colleagues and connections there, they are biased in terms of the information they put out. They will much more likely put out a negative headline about teenagers than a positive headline about teenagers because they know what gets clicks. And so we continue to be in environments where there's a lot of scary information about teenagers. It is put up often and in ways that are very, very enticing. But it's a problem that there is such a negative tilt towards how we talk and think about teenagers. And it's a problem for a couple of reasons. One is it scares the adults. And scaring adults does not make us better at raising teenagers. It makes us more anxious when they actually need us less anxious. The other is that it gives us a very incomplete view of adolescence. It gives us the dark side, the things that aren't working, the things that aren't so great. And there are real problems, and we are working through an adolescent mental health crisis, but that is not the whole story about teenagers. So a couple of years ago, the Walton Family Foundation very generously gave me my own Gallup poll. Like, right? I never do it. Like, that was a gift you could get, but they gave me a Gallup poll. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try to work against these headlines and ask a little bit more about what's going on with teenagers. And so one of the questions I asked them was, did you feel any of the following a lot yesterday? And I asked them about a whole bunch of feelings. And this is the only chart in the whole presentation. And here's what they said. 94% said happiness. 93-ish% said enjoyment. Roughly 45% said stress. 39% said anxiety. A little more than 30% said anger. And in the 20s, we see sadness and loneliness. Okay, if you're adding this up, you see it gets to way more than 100%. Because adolescents feel all of these things. They feel incredible despair. They feel incredible elation. They feel worries. They feel loneliness. They will sometimes feel all of these before 9 o'clock in the morning, right? That's teenagers. So part of what teenagers need is for us to recognize that there are real concerns to be had. We do need to address these from policy, philanthropy, parenting, all of those things matter. And side by side with that, teenagers are whole, teenagers are complete. They are not just suffering, they are not just anxious, they are also amazing, they are also incredible, they are the funniest people on the planet, they're the most enjoyable, and 94% of the time they felt happiness yesterday. So we want to see them as whole and real people because they are. Okay, next thing they need, accurate information about mental health. So back to this idea that now we're talking about mental health all the time. This is interesting. If you have a teenager or around teenagers, they use the phrase mental health constantly. And if I were a linguist, I would study how they use it, because they use it in such interesting ways. Like, that's getting in the way of my mental health, this isn't good for my mental health, this person isn't caring about my mental health, this is benefiting my mental health. I'm like, when you say that, what do you mean by mental health, right? It's highly elastic. In general, this is good. We want to think about the mental health of our teenagers. That said, there's a lot of misunderstanding running around. Some of that misunderstanding is cultural. The whole culture is sharing a misunderstanding. And the big misunderstanding that we're sharing right now, and it's not just kids, it's the adults too, is that being mentally healthy is about feeling, is that being mentally healthy is about feeling good. I love for people to feel good. That is not what mental health is. It is not what mental health has ever been. Mental health is about two things. It's about having feelings that fit what's actually happening, and it's managing those feelings well. So the kid who has a very bad day, right? They get dumped by their boyfriend or girlfriend, they get a bad grade back, they spill on themselves on an outfit they really like. That kid should be upset. The presence of their distress is proof of mental health. They are having feelings that fit the circumstance. And this is such an obvious point when I make it this way. This is 180 from what the headlines are telling us right now. The headlines right now are equating distress with a mental health concern. So part of us advancing a more accurate view of what mental health is that often, and I will say most of the time, distress is actually proof of mental health. If your kid's best friend moves away, your kid should be upset. If your kid's not upset, something's wrong. So first and foremost, we have to help young people understand, and everyone around them understand, that distress on its own is not grounds for concern. It's often proof of mental health. So that's the big cultural misunderstanding we are working against. We are also working against TikTok mental health. Right? There's a lot of, I'm going to say, information going around on TikTok about mental health. Okay, I'm going to try not to be too grumpy about this. But it is fascinating, these experts who are getting on and putting up videos about mental health, or I'm going to say mental health. So often when these come across my plate, I'm like, that's not even a diagnosis. Like, there's no such thing as that thing, right, that you're talking about, right? Or I'm like, and this is where I can get grumpy, where I'm like, that's not trauma? You want trauma? Like, there's real trauma. Like, that's not trauma, right? So there's a lot of that circulating. There's a lot of that circulating. And I can tell from you that I'm not the only one who can get a little grumpy about this sometimes. And part of what my grumpiness comes from, truly, actually, is that I do practice. And I feel like I don't want to diminish real suffering by talking about all things as though they are that level of distress. I want us to save room and space to talk about people who are suffering in ways that we have long recognized and diagnosed, and distinguish those from a very bad day. Now, when I have to, and it sounds like you may have to, sometimes get into a conversation with somebody who's bringing across a TikTok view of mental health, I do everything in my power to hide my grumpiness. Because at bottom, that person is sharing an experience. They saw something online that resonated with them. And what I have found is if I say, tell me more about your depression that you diagnosed, right? I really try to be decent about this. You learn one of two things. Sometimes they have correctly diagnosed their own depression. And sometimes they are very sad and have every right to be sad. And by being generous and being curious, you can open up a meaningful conversation about the distinctions between depression and sadness. And what I will tell you is that any kid who is spending time looking on TikTok for information about mental health is interested in mental health. And what I will tell you about teenagers is they are also interested in good information. So however they may arrive with their diagnostic terms that we've never heard of before, the key thing is to recognize that underneath that is a kid who is curious about mental health, who has noticed and observed something, and if you engage it, you will learn more about that young person, and sometimes they are actually dead to rights, they got it, and sometimes they are very glad to have a better understanding. Okay, I want to go back to what I said about how I and other clinicians and experts diagnose mental health or think about what mental health is. So it's about having feelings that fit the circumstances, even if those are uncomfortable or unwanted feelings, and it's about managing those feelings well. Okay, let's spend some time on managing those feelings well. This is where the rubber hits the road on a mental health concern. When I am caring for people, my question is not, are you in distress? Of course they're in distress. They wouldn't be in my office if they weren't in distress. The question is, what are you doing in response to that distress? And the great divide is either people are going to manage their distress in a way that brings relief and does no harm, or they're going to manage their distress in a way that brings relief and comes at a cost. They're always going to manage their distress. But if you want to know if there's a mental health concern, it's actually the second question. What are they doing in response to it? So when we think about the things that bring relief and come at a cost, there are truly 4 of them that we are watching for. One is using avoidance to manage anxiety. That the problem with anxiety is it makes you want to avoid things, and the problem with avoidance is that it makes you feel much better in the short term. In the long term, it makes you more anxious. So we don't like for people to use avoidance to manage anxiety. If the thing they're avoiding, they should reasonably be expected to do. The second way that we don't want people to manage feelings, and I'm talking about people of any age, in a way that brings relief but comes at a cost, is turning to substances. They work. That's the problem, right? If you feel really lousy and you smoke a ton of weed, you will feel much better. But again, this is not a lasting strategy. The third thing we don't want people to do to manage distress is to take it out on other people. If you've had a lousy day and you come home and you give everybody at home a hard time, you will feel better. Again, not a lasting strategy. Tears of relationships does harm. And the fourth thing that we don't want people to do when they're distressed is to take it out on themselves, right? To collapse in on themselves, to harm themselves, to fail to take care of themselves. So my whole job can basically be defined as keeping people from doing these four things. The distress is a done deal. We are all going to have hard times. All of our teenagers are going to have hard times. What we are aiming to do is keep people from avoiding things that make them anxious, getting into substances, taking it out on other people, taking it out on themselves. That's when we have mental health concerns. Anything else that a person does that brings relief and does no harm is considered healthy coping. Okay, but this is where it gets interesting in terms of what teens need. Teens need adults who appreciate how healthy teens cope. All right, my favorite thing in the world is to get with a group of teenagers about the size of you and play a game called Worst Day Ever. And what we do is we put together their worst day ever, and it is actually hilarious what they come up with, right? Like, it invariably involves, like, getting rear-ended or rear-ending a teacher or, like, something, like, you know, like, it's always, like, got some, like, wacky stuff. And I have to put parameters around it. I'm like, don't say, like, a meteor takes us all out, because then there's nowhere for us to go. Like, it has to be within the realm of possibility. And then I say, okay, let's say you get to the end of your terrible, terrible day, and you get back to your home, and let's say, for some reason, like, you don't have school tomorrow, and let's say your folks call, and they're like, you know what, we're going to be out for a few hours, you've got the place to yourself. I'm like, how do you help yourself feel better? This is my favorite game. I have yet to have a kid be like, I reach out to an adult and talk with them about my feelings. I've done this for years. That has never been high on the list. And though I have nothing against meditation practices, I have yet to have a teenager be like, I go to my mindfulness practices, right? Okay. Those are both wonderful, wonderful strategies. I am sure there are teenagers somewhere out there where that is the top of their list. That's not most teenagers. And so another question I asked in that Gallup poll is basically, left to your own self, how do you help yourself feel better after a bad day? The number one answer by a great margin, listening to music. They love their music. And what I can tell you is that teenagers have playlists. Many of them have feelings names attached. And they are very carefully curated. And they go to those playlists to literally manipulate and manage their mood. And it is as adaptive and healthy as anything we could ask from them. So my favorite side hustle is collecting the names of these playlists. Okay. So right now, Crashing Out is a very popular playlist title. And Crashing Out is a very interesting, again, teenagers in their language. It's like this weird mix of like sad and angry and disorganized and all of it. So Crashing Out probably means different things to different kids, but Crashing Out is probably the number one playlist title right now. Other ones, my sad and peaceful playlist, my pure feminist rage playlist, my grrr playlist, a recent favorite, even boss bitches get the blues playlist. Okay. They're brilliant, right? They're absolutely wonderful. Like, so back to the earlier point, like, these are 3D human beings. They are not well captured by the headlines. Okay. So what we have to really, really appreciate about these playlists is what kids are doing is actually backed by science. We have lab studies showing that if you go listening to mood-matching music, it actually deepens the intensity of that feeling and speeds you through and out of it. You feel better faster. And so they are doing something brilliant. And often they'll be like, all right, I've had the worst day ever. I'm going to listen to my crashing out playlist until I get some of those feelings out. And then I'm going to switch over to my yeah, yeah, yeah playlist. That's one of my other, to boost myself up. Okay, we could not ask for anything more adaptive, anything more autonomous, anything more instantaneous and portable than this. And I think sometimes, if not a lot of times, a kid's had a really bad day, they're doing this, and we're like, look at that teenager on their phone, right? And I'm like, oh, but they're doing such an important and valuable thing. Okay, so that's one of the ways they cope. The next two things that they told me, hanging out with their friends, playing video games. Okay, video games are complicated. Video games are complicated. They are dark and light. Here's the upside of video games. Distraction is a form of healthy coping. We are wrong to think that the only way to cope is to actually face the thing head on. If whatever happened is unfixable and you can't let go of it, finding something very, very engaging to just stop thinking about it for a little bit is a great way to get your feelings back under control. And the beauty of video games is they are highly engaging. If you are playing a video game, it's hard to think about anything else. So they serve a purpose. Now, good coping brings relief and does no harm. If you are on that video game for 3 hours longer than you were supposed to be or than you wanted to be, or even 20 minutes longer than you meant to be, it can start to encroach on other things that are important. So video games need bounds around them, but we have to be careful to just not be like, oh, kids in their video games, right? Video games can serve a purpose. They can be healthy and adaptive. And for a lot of kids, they're highly social. Not uncomplicated social, but social. Other things kids do. They hang out with their pets. They love to be with their pets. They roll around on the floor with their animals when they've had a very bad day. This is wildly adaptive. And if we think about it with teenagers especially, teenagers often need a hug. It's not always easy as a teenager to ask for a hug, right? You may not want to ask one from your folks. It may be a little weird with your peers. The dog is here for it, right? Whereas one teenage girl said to me, well, sometimes on these days, I go home and I force cuddle my cat. Other things teenagers do, they go back and rewatch things over and over and over again. And I will never forget the 9th grade boy who, in all earnestness, said to me, is it okay that I just like to rewatch the same old shows? And I was like, buddy, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Because here's why. You need to do something that you know is going to help you feel better. Your day, the one we just invented, went sideways in 400 ways you could not have seen coming. When you sit down with a show that you have seen before, and you know exactly what's going to happen, and you know exactly how you're going to feel at the end, and it's 22 minutes, and you are ready to now face your homework, what more could we ask you to do? On the TV thing, the other thing that's fascinating to me about teenagers, they actually like to go back and watch stuff they liked when they were little, really little. They watch a lot of Octonauts. Big, hairy teenagers watch a lot of Octonauts. And if you ask them about it, they're like, it's a vibe. Okay. I will tell you, there are a lot of very powerful junior girls watching a whole lot of Barbie in the Dream House. They love it. They love it. Okay. So, again, this is a really adaptive thing. This is a really adaptive thing. You have these juniors, right, who are basically like running worlds, right? They are incredibly powerful. They're incredibly capable. They're on top of everything. They are dealing with heavy demands, social, academic, they're thinking about the economics they're walking into, right? I mean, these kids are thinking about such big things. For them to be able to get into a mental time machine, go back to when they were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, life was a lot simpler, hang out with Barbie and her friends for 22 minutes, and then come back and like crush the SAT, like, again, what more could we ask from them? So this is to say, I think we have a really important job as adults. One is to not fail to recognize all of the brilliant and highly effective ways that teenagers naturally cope. 2, to actually support kids in doing that, not to come around the corner and be like, why are you watching Octonauts, right? But instead to be like, you want company? You want to do this alone, right? To support it. And 3, to not take it personally that we're not always their go-to. I will say that the question I get more than any other question in any circumstance I'm in is, how do I get my teenager to talk to me about their feelings? I get it. I get it. We love our kids. We can see when they're upset. We want to help. We want to know what's wrong, and we want to be able to jump in. I think there are times when kids actually really do want to do that. I think it's very rarely when the adult is initiating it. I think most of the time when kids want to talk about feelings, it's that they have decided they're ready to open up. They are in circumstances where they know they're not going to get trapped, right? It might be that we're already in bed, and so if we start asking too many questions, they just leave. It might be that we're in the car and we're almost home, and so they know that if they open the conversation, it can't go on for more than 3 minutes because we're almost there, right? They want to have control of the circumstances. I think in those moments, kids open up. But I really do worry about the way in which we have put talking about feelings as the central thing we are aiming to get young people to do. Because talking about feelings is effective, but it is one of many, 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 many ways that kids cope. And it's not high on their list. And so if we keep it high on our list as like, this is the end all be all, is I'll know you're okay when you're talking to me about your feelings, we're going to fail to support what they're doing that's already working. We're going to come at them too often with questions that they are not in the mood to answer. And we're actually not going to make the space available for them to want to talk when they do want to talk. So it's important, but it's not the end all be all. Okay. Next, help with managing stress. All right, it's really stressful to be a teenager. And it's really stressful to be somebody raising a teenager. All right, let's talk about this for a minute. Now, one of the reasons this is also stressful is that the rule we have in psychology, and if you leave with nothing else today, leave with this, is that change equals stress. Anytime we are adapting to new conditions, we experience this as stressful. Now, think about teenagers. Think about a 12-year-old and an 18-year-old. That's 6 years. Think about how completely different those two people are. I think about myself 6 years ago. I'm still wearing the same clothes. I'm still making the same dinners, right? I'm still using the same makeup, probably the same exact makeup, right? We don't change like that. A 12-year-old and an 18-year-old, they are from like two different planets. There is no way you're going to see that volume of change without a lot of stress. And there's no way it's not going to be stressful for them and stressful for you. So the first thing we need is to understand for ourselves and for our kids, this is just going to be stressful. And it's not because they're getting it wrong or we're getting it wrong. It's because they are growing, changing people, and it's happening fast. The second thing that we want to help young people understand and remind ourselves to as well is not only is stress a given, stress is a good. This is very far away from how we talk about it in the culture. Right now, we talk about stress as though it is always and everywhere toxic and bad for you. It can be. There are a couple of forms of stress that are bad for you. Chronic stress, stress without break, and trauma. We do not like those. Everything else is a Wednesday, as I say, right? It's just life doing life, asking a lot of us. The reason we see it as a good is that stress is actually the condition under which we grow. You only grow when you are experiencing stress. If you are relaxed, that is wonderful. You are not currently growing. If you are doing things that are hard, that are at the edge of your capacity, that are a demand, you are also gaining capacity at that time. So the metaphor I just absolutely love and love to beat to death on this one is that stress is like strength training. We understand that strength training is literally stressful if it is working. If you go to the gym and the weights you are lifting are not stressful, you are wasting your time. The entire point is that it actually is not just stressful, but actually uncomfortable. Until it gets uncomfortable, nothing is happening. We fully accept this around anything physical and athletic. It is exactly the same. Academic stress, unless the work is hard, you are not learning. Emotional stress, unless you are going through things that are actually quite challenging, you are not growing as a person. All of these things are how we grow. It doesn't feel good, but that doesn't mean it's bad for us. And that equation is so hard. People feel like, well, if it feels bad, it must be bad. No, it feels bad, that means it's working, right? This is how stress goes. Okay, so when we think about stress, the first thing that we can do and we can help our kids do is to not get stressed about being stressed. This is important. This is important because they're operating in this environment that's telling them that, like, there's some emotional zen out there and mental health is about being happy and well-being is about not being stressed. Okay, this is so unhelpful because invariably they're unhappy and now they're worried about their mental health, and then invariably they're stressed and now they're worried about what that means. Okay, not helpful. So on the stress front, what we need to help kids understand is stress is growth. Growth is uncomfortable. You're going to get something out of it. Even more, we can go back to the strength training metaphor and talk about recovery. Because if we think about good strength training, it's actually a two-part process. The first part is actually doing uncomfortable things at the gym. The second part is adequate recovery for those muscles. And anyone who's serious about strength training actually puts these on equal footing. So if we want to help ourselves and our kids manage stress, don't get stressed about stress. Focus on recovery. Because stress plus recovery equals growth. Recovery we have a lot more control of. Stresses are going to come and go. We can't decide how stressful a day is going to be. It just happens. Recovery is what matters. All right, so for you and for your kids, we want to think about how do you recover? Is there enough sleep? That is the number one form of recovery, and often the first we ignore. Is there enough enjoyable downtime? Is your kid doing things that actually work for them as recovery, spending time with friends, going outside? Are you doing things that work for recovery? I will say probably the biggest mistake we all make with recovery is that we waste it. We have a free moment, we hop on our phones. We come out of that 5 minutes feeling worse than we went into it. So focus on recovery, focus on good recovery. And then the thing I will say, and this is so important to me, focus on guiltless recovery. Because what I see all the time, I'll put it in terms of teenagers, but I think this probably applies to many of us. I see these incredibly hardworking, awesome teenagers doing all the right things, driving themselves, accomplishing a huge amount, finally, getting enough done, getting to a point where they just naturally recover because they know they have to. So they put on Barbie Life in the Dream House. They deserve it, they need it, they're watching it the whole time having this nagging sense of guilt. I could be working, I could be getting more done, I shouldn't be doing this. Guilt-soaked recovery is not recovery. So what we want for ourselves and our kids is to go all in on the work and go all in on the recovery and to see them as equally valuable. Okay, what else do our kids need? Connections to caring adults outside the home. So there's a lot out there about the causes of mental health concerns for teens and what's good for teens. Here's what we know, and this is the other thing. If you take one thing from this talk, please take this. The single most powerful force for adolescent mental health is strong relationships with caring adults. Full stop. If we want to protect adolescent mental health, we protect their strong relationships with caring adults. Now, ideally, this can be adults at home. But we all know, no matter how awesome your relationship with your teenager is, there comes a day where they don't want to hear it from you, or where you are just so annoying, no matter what you do. They still need strong relationships with caring adults. Now, the beautiful thing about teenagers is that in the normal course of events, they start to develop more of these outside the home, whether it's teachers, coaches, mentors, bosses. And there is nothing better than a great adult who cares for your kid, who is helping them learn and grow. That adult outside the home, whether it's a family member or somebody who runs a volunteer program, somebody at your place of worship, can ask things of your kids that you cannot ask, can bring out sides of your kid that you will never bring out, can help that kid feel valued in ways that no matter what we do as parents, we can't quite match. So if you ask me, one of the number one mental health interventions for teenagers, I would say, a job with a good boss. And by job, I mean not a cushy internship. I mean like a job, right? Where they are doing shit work, basically. There's no other way to say it. with a good boss who is helping them lean into and build out that side of themselves. Now, this gets to something else that's really important beyond just the connection to an adult, which is this whole idea of purpose. Purpose is wonderful, and we talk about the importance of purpose in helping young people grow and its value. At the same time, purpose can feel awfully big, right? I think that, as parents, we can be like, oh my gosh, like, what am I supposed to want my kid to be able to do? Like, my kid's purpose is to cure cancer. My kid's purpose is to end climate change. Like, what this feels like a little demanding. Okay, here's the really good news. I have this wonderful colleague, Andrew Fellini at UCLA, and he's like, we looked at the research. Purpose is not about changing the world. Purpose is about feeling counted on. Counted on. Okay, I love this. It is so doable. It is so realistic. And so part of the other thing that happens when kids have jobs is, first of all, it puts them in touch with caring adults outside the home, which they're going to need. And second, somebody is counting on them. And as much as kids may grumble about having to be at the pool at 8 a.m. to start lifeguarding, somebody is counting on them. And it's good in its own right. It also gives kids things to feel good about. One of the jobs of a teenager is to maintain a decent level of self-esteem. This is hard. You are always being measured against other people. There are people who have more natural talent than you do in a lot of things. It can make you feel small. You showing up on time to do a good job of shit work is, in its own way, I really mean it, a totally reliable source of self-esteem, especially if it is overseen by somebody who is not your parent and doesn't love you, saying, you did a good job. You did a good job. Okay. Here's what teens need now: a balanced approach to tech. Whew, boy, is this a topic. Is this a topic? Okay. It's an important topic. Let me start by saying, though, it can hijack the conversation about mental health in ways that are not as helpful to teens as we want to be. One of the things that we look at when we're doing the science of adolescent mental health is what we call effect sizes. Like, how much does one variable drive an outcome? So if we look at the outcome that is adolescent mental health, and we look at all of the variables that drive or compromise adolescent mental health, social media is one of them. But in the pie chart, it's actually not a big slice. Runs about 6% in a 100% pie chart. This is important, because if you look at the media coverage, it's like 94% social media, 6% everything else. All right, what's in the other 96%? Early trauma, parental mental health, peer concerns, academic pressures, worries about the future, food insecurity, right? I mean, there's a lot there that weighs on teenagers. So tech is not a non-thing, but it's not the only thing. And we want to talk about it, but we don't want to talk about it to the exclusion of all of the other things that we know impact adolescent mental health. Okay, but to talk about it, here's what I will say. There are a couple of things that we can do to significantly improve the conversation with teenagers about tech and that work well to minimize the risks that are real. And there are real risks around tech and around social media. One is we need to uncouple giving kids phones and giving them social media. One problem with the current discourse is it kind of rolls them all up together, like phones, and that is a stand-in for social media and every app you'd never heard of before, but suddenly your kid wants. Okay. It doesn't have to be like this. You can give a kid a smartphone and not give them social media. That opens up a lot of opportunity. You can give a kid a phone that has no social media, no apps that you haven't approved, no browser. We don't talk enough about browsers. When kids see things they aren't supposed to see, it's often the browser, not social media, that is the problem. And you can even, and we did this just at the AT&T store, set up the phone so they can't add any of those things without your permission. This buys you a lot of time. A lot of time. Usually when kids are asking for a phone, there are two things that are driving it. One is their friends have started to text and they want to know what's going on. That's fair. this is often how kids start to make plans. And I actually think it's okay for kids to start with texting. And for me, texting is like JV social media, right? It's like a good place to start, right? And if a kid handles texting like some do, like, I mean this, this is a great place to use this example. There are kids who text like 40-year-old librarians, right? They're like, hello, period. Right, okay. If that's your kid, right? When they're like, I'd like to consider social media, you might be like, you know what, you're probably fine with it, right? There are other kids, you give them a phone and they get into the naughtiest text thread ever within 10 seconds, right? Okay. Do not give that child social media anytime soon, right? So texting is like we do all things in parenting, like a little. Let's see how it goes. And then we'll do a little more. The other reason kids want phones, and we never talk about this, because they're cool, right? Because they're cool. They want the item. Do you remember how we wanted jellies and stirrup pants, right? And so if our parents were like, well, what about these other perfectly good pants? We'd be like, what are you talking about, right? I need those pants. So it's funny, I think we just forget, right? That when we're like offering them a flip phone, there is not a kid on the planet I know who would take a flip phone. Like, are you kidding? Like, okay, it's like regular pants. Like, why would I want those, right? Okay, so if we uncouple phones and social media, you can actually give a kid a smartphone. You can let them text with their friends. You can also say, as I have said to both of my adolescents, you are on this device, texting only, until the day comes where you cannot keep up with social plans in the absence of social media, and we will have that conversation when the day comes. And I am hoping that day is when you are 15, 16, or later. Texting is going to get you through a long time. And kids, they can do a long time on texting. Okay, the other thing that is really helpful, simplest rule ever, but hugely important, don't let kids take tech in their bedrooms, right? Now, there are some homes where that is the only place to do homework, and I 100% get it. And in that case, that kid should have that phone, computer, whatever they need in their room to get their work done. When they are supposed to be asleep, it should all come out. There is zero reason for kids to have tech in their bedrooms when they are supposed to be sleeping. There are 5,000 reasons why you do not want tech in a kid's bedroom when they're supposed to be sleeping. Number one, it keeps kids up. And if we go back to that pie chart, one slice that's actually slightly bigger than social media is sleep loss. We are watching kids sleep less and less. Sleep and mental health are best friends. Now, this may be because of technology, but it's a thing in its own right. So helping protect sleep is important. The other reason you don't want sleep in tech in a kid's room, especially overnight, you'll never see them again. You know how they like to be in their rooms? Well, if you let them be in their rooms with their phones, they have no reason to come out, ever, right? Which gets to a third reason, which is it is very hard to impress upon teenagers that everything they do in a digital environment is public and permanent. And if they are in their rooms, squirreled away behind closed doors, in their bed with their phone, it really does feel like their own private internet. If they need to use their tech where anybody could walk by, it helps create a nice, wordless, structural reminder this is essentially a public activity. Last reason not to have it overnight, the dumbest things I've ever seen kids do, they do at 1 a.m, right? They are exhausted, they are impulsive, bad choices are made. Okay. Now, if you're sitting here and you're like, uh-oh, right, this ship sailed a long time ago, my kid totally has tech in their room. Okay, back to what I said before. The single most powerful force for adolescent mental health is strong relationships with caring adults. Do not blow up your relationship over this. The question I would ask is it a problem? Is it keeping your kid up? Is it getting in the way? If you're like, no, actually, they use it like a 40-year-old librarian, right? They, put it to sleep, they wake up with it, it's not a problem. Don't create a fight over something that's not a problem. If you're like, I don't know, they might be up with it, you can go back and say, okay, this lady at the library raised some real questions about whether or not you're sleeping. If I think it's a problem, it's coming out. A lot of kids will fix it on the spot so as to keep it in their room. And if they're like, yep, nope, I'm up all night with it, okay, that's a fight worth having. We want our kids to sleep. Here's the last thing that teens need now. Adults who take good care of themselves. We want to be a rock. We want to be a steady presence in the waves and currents that our teenagers are working with. This is really hard. It's hard because our teenagers bring a lot at us. It's also hard because our lives are very full. And when our teenagers do come at us with a lot of upset or a lot of distress, or they're not being their best selves, we do want to try to be a steady presence. And to do that, taking good care of ourselves will go a long way. Getting enough sleep, getting enough restoration, doing it without guilt, knowing what restoration means for you. You all need to protect that. And we all need to remember that how we take care of our teenagers, a big part of it is taking care of ourselves. It's not a zero-sum game. We take care of them by taking care of ourselves. Now, I think as much as we can, we want to try to be a steady presence for our kids. But I will say, as a mother myself, or fake being a steady presence for our kids, right? A lot of the time, we don't feel a steady presence, but we're putting it on. Okay, so to help you do that, everybody got a bookmark with how to manage a meltdown. This is the best piece of writing I've ever done. I've come to terms with that. This is a 9-step strategy for when your kid is having a hard time and you are trying to be a steady presence and maybe it's not coming to you naturally. I've made you the cheat sheet. Now, the key instruction at the top of this bookmark is pause between each step to see if it worked. If not, move on to the next step. I promise you, most of the time, you never get past step 3. Listen, empathize, validate. That's what they want. But that's my gift to you to help you be a steady presence or fake being a steady presence. So the last thing I want to show you is all of the resources I've worked to make available. So one of the best parts about my job is I get to give almost everything away. So there's 2 things that I have that are free. This is also on the back of your bookmark. One is my podcast. Another is my weekly newsletter that I put a lot of time into each week. Comes right to you. This QR code will also take you to all of our playlists for our podcast, because we have so many episodes at this point that we have entire categories that you can dive into. But this lists all the free resources, and I hope you will please avail yourself of them. Thank you so much. Now raise your hand, and we have a mic. So you have to wait for the mic, but we'll get you to it. What thoughts do you have? What's on your minds? You got a question in the back.
Hi, thank you so much. One of the things that I was reflecting on when you were talking about coping skills is a lot of healthy coping skills are things that maybe I might think to take away as a consequence or a punishment, when all of my other great gentle skills don't seem to be getting through. So I'm wondering, that might not be the best thing if they're stressed out, they're acting out in some way, and I'm taking away a healthy adaptive tool. What other things could I potentially be doing in that case?
So give me a for instance, so your kid does this and you do that and you're wondering.
Okay, for instance, you didn't do your chores today, so you can't have your AirPods, which you would normally be listening to music, or I'm going to take away your screen time tonight because you didn't do your chores, or you hit your brother, or, we're still in that tween phase, so it's a little bit more of that type of behavior. But yeah, when I'm trying to basically make them do things I want them to do, and I'm doing reward consequence vibes.
Okay, well, for the most part, I would say you're probably on the right course, right? That if your kid thinks you're awesome all the time, you're doing something wrong, right? And the way I think about it is we are here to create members of a civil society. And we are here to have kids understand that privileges and responsibilities are naturally connected. And when you do the things that are your responsibilities, you get to enjoy privileges. And when you don't meet your responsibilities, you don't get to enjoy privileges. And this is not some fresh new hell we've created in our home, right? This is how the whole world works, right? If you want to get your paycheck, which is a privilege, you got to show up for your job, right? So this is just introducing them to the natural workings of the world, right, in our very own homes. So I actually think it's perfectly fine if you're this is a privilege to enjoy your phone or the TV or the whatever, which is enjoyed upon completing your responsibilities. You make the call, right? And I think that the key thing here is trying to make teenagers do things. That's the hardest thing in the world. And the reason is they're so organized around autonomy. And I've written about this, that I've literally had kids show up in my practice and were like, oh, I'm so upset. I was about to clean my room, and then my mother told me to clean my room. And then I had to spend an hour fighting with her about how I wouldn't clean my room, and here I am, and I really wish my room were clean, right? So as soon as you're like, I'm trying to make my teenager do something, you're already like, instead, you're like, I am here to show them the grand connection between privileges and responsibilities. You clean, you walk the dog, you get your AirPods. You don't walk the dog, you don't get your AirPods. I don't care. I don't care. Like that's like, I think it's the like agnosticism about what choice they make. Now they're all mad they didn't get their AirPods. You say, gosh, well then you probably will make a different choice tomorrow, right? But I'm not gonna try to make you do it. I'm gonna tell you how these two things are connected. I do think what matters is noticing how our kids like to cope and noticing how they struggle and how they like to manage when they're struggling. But I think if you have things that are real privileges that happen to be the things they also go to when they're upset, they also may be the things they're willing to, meet their responsibilities to continue to enjoy. We have one up here and then one over there.
Thank you so much. So we all know how valuable the time is in the car.
Yes.
And you get that, opportunity to hear from them. Maybe it's the first time of the day. So I'm curious, what is the question you ask? Because you don't say, how was your day? Because we all know that's not how you're going to get the best information. And I think conversations is where most of the good work is done. And so I want to know, what is your question?
Okay. I would first try nothing. This requires that you have a decent enough ride, right? You have a little time to work. You have a little time to work, and like traffic in Denver is a real thing now. You may have more time than you used to. Certainly when I was growing up here. Okay, so I would just be like, what do you want to listen to? You want to run the? We call it. Do you want to DJ? Why don't you DJ? Right. So I would just start with no agenda. No agenda. Teenagers really like adults with no agenda. And they like when we make space and time to be with them when we have no agenda. I would say that's when you're most likely to get something. I think they are very reluctant to bend themselves to our agendas. I think they love us and they will do it. I don't think that's where you're going to have the most earnest conversations. Okay, now, there may be times when you're like, this needs to be discussed. Like, I just heard a terrifying thing about fentanyl and like we have to have this conversation yesterday, right? Then I think there are times when we bring it up. Like, I want to talk with you about this, right? I don't think we just have to wait forever just hoping they somehow magically bring up the key topics, right? Like there are times when we need to bring things up. I think we can do that. I think the thing that we have to do whenever we're introducing a topic is we have to understand the kid is like, why is this coming up now, right? And so we have to give them context. We have to be like, I was reading an article about fentanyl. I just got to show, what do you know about it? I got to share with you what I read, right? Like, you can bring it up, but if you bring something up out of the blue, your kid's first thought is, what do you think I'm into? Right? Like, they really are like, why are you, like, who, like, they don't get it. So I would make space and time to see what they bring up. I would hold back my own agenda. And if I had an agenda, I would be really forthright about it. I would be really forthright. Teenagers love it when you play your cards face up, right? So I would do that. The other thing I will say, if you're like, okay, I held my agenda, I let the kid DJ, not a word was said. We were in the car for 40 minutes. Not a word was said. Here's what I will tell you. For teenagers, they will come tell me, those are the times sometimes when they feel the most deeply connected to us. The most deeply connected. That we spent the entire car ride interested in their music, curious about why they liked what they liked. They are so grateful for that agendaless presence. And I think this is I would say probably the central challenge of parenting teenagers. What feels like connection to us is not what feels like connection to them. What feels like connection to us is, I ask the right question, I open the magic box, you tell me things. Right? And what feels like connection to them is, you listen to this entire time to music that I'm really into right now, and you just let that go. You just let us do that together. And you like what I like, you're interested in what I'm interested in, you care about what I care about. that for them is so powerful. There was a question over here. Yeah.
Okay, so in all fairness, I will just say I just had boot camp with 3 teenagers on vacation as a grandmother. So I think your next book is going to be about grandparents and what grandparents need to be doing, because the rest of us are wondering that. 3 teenagers and an 8-year-old that sings all the time. So she was singing and having fun, and the teenagers were not singing. And we were in Mexico on vacation. And so my question to you is this. I wish my husband was here, because he and I live this together. Is I didn't realize how much time they actually do spend on the phone.
Yeah.
And I couldn't differentiate from when they were listening to music versus when they were whatever was going on. But they walk around and all this stuff. So it got to the point where I said, I think we need a day off from each other. Mm-hmm. You go and sleep or do whatever it is that you need to do, and we're going to do our thing and then come back together and be nice again. But we talk a lot about being present, and I said, this is not being present. You're sitting there with something on your ears, AirPods, whatever they had at that time. And I think we need a guide that differentiates when are they really just relaxing, which I think they were a lot of times. And I was failing to understand what was going on in their use of their phone. But it was a little bit scary to see that phone is the lifeline. And if that phone dies, oh my goodness. We have a crisis.
Yes.
Because we have to get it charged. We have to. I was around with a backup battery, and they loved me a lot when I had a backup battery. So, but I think that's the next book.
I love this. I love this. Okay, this is a great. I'm going to wrap up on this one because it's such a key. There's so many key points here. Okay, number one, when we look at the harms that come with technology, there's 3 really big ones we want to watch for. One is actually 2 big ones. One is the garbage that is in fact on social media. There's a lot of really toxic, horrible content, and as soon as kids are on social media, they're going to be exposed to it. So delay, no question. And with that, and I think this gets to your question, the thing that makes me most anxious about technology is actually the algorithms, right? And the way these algorithms work is that as soon as they detect that your kid's interested in something, they flood their feed with it. Okay, so if your kid's interested in cat videos, fine. If your kid's interested in carpet cleaning videos, as many adolescents are, fine. They are. I mean, it's like so funny and weird, right? If your kid is interested, in weight loss, fitness, hate content, misogyny of any form, they are about to get a flood of it. And the problem with this is that teenagers are norm vulnerable. What they think the norms are, they will shift their behavior to the norms. So I get stuck in an algorithm sometime about folding clothes, how to fold clothes, right? Okay, I love it. This does not change how I fold clothes. I'm 54 years old. I fold clothes the way I fold clothes, right? If a teenager, though, sees 1,000 images of ultra-fit bodies or 1,000 comments filled with slurs and hate, those things start to feel normal. Those start to feel like everybody's doing them, and we know it shifts behavior. Okay, so the algorithms are terrible. The algorithms not only put terrible content in front of kids, the algorithms have so much data on every one of us that they can put in front of you something that is utterly irresistible as the next thing in your feed. So to the kinds of conversations we want to have with teenagers, the great thing about teenagers is they do not like to be manipulated and they do not like to be played. So what I don't like about the conversation about phones and social media is that when it's shaped in this form of oh my God, teenagers and their dumb phones and their dumb social media, that makes me bananas. What I do like is when we're okay, teenagers, kiddo, you and me, it's you and me versus all of Silicon Valley. Because it is. Because it is. And the reason kids spend way, way more time, and we spend way, way more time on our phones than we mean to be, is not for lack of character, not for lack of other better things to do. It's because Silicon Valley has literally millions and millions and millions of data points that they are using to make the decision about what comes next. Your kid can't win that. So the first thing we do is we have that conversation with teenagers, right? That they're being manipulated in the name of those companies making as much money as absolutely possible. The second conversation is, how do we put guardrails, or how does the teenager put guardrails around this so they get what they want out of their tech and they're not getting played? I am watching more and more teenagers put their own time limits on their phones, which is a great solution because they're like, great, give me 40 minutes of cat videos and then I'm out, right? And on the cat video thing, they don't watch TV like we watched. Think about the garbage we watched, right? Like, this is their mindless entertainment. I have no problem with that as long as they feel in control. Okay, so that's one side of it. The other side of it is, because it's so alluring, what we don't want tech to do, even if it's benign or banal what they're looking at, is get in the way of things that are good for their kids. Spending time with their grandparents at the table, actually having a conversation, right? Like, that's high on the list. Sleep, I'm going to bring it up 400 times. Studying in a focused way, contributing to the community, right? These things. So when we talk with kids about why we have concerns about tech, I think the best way to approach it is, you are free to enjoy your tech. It should not get in the way of anything else that we know is good for your development. So let's make these primary, and then you put the tech in around it. And also, while you're on the tech, bear in mind, it is designed to be irresistible. That is not on you. That is the fact that we don't regulate this, which is terrible. So you're going to have to regulate it, and if you can't regulate it, I'll help you regulate it. But kids are ready to have that conversation, and they know how these things work. But it has to be, and this is, again, so critically important. It has to be a conversation. It has to be in relationship. And the way to enter this conversation, like any other with teenagers, is to say, like, what do you like about your phone? What do you hate about your phone? If you start with what do you like and really listen in earnest, they will tell you. And if you say, what don't you like? They will tell you. And then if you say, what do you do? How can I help you to make this work well for you? They will be there. Coming in over the top with rules that are hard and rash and don't make sense to them, single most powerful force for adolescent mental health is strong relationships with caring adults. We need to use that to regulate their relationship with tech. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for all of your insight and your wisdom. You made me feel really validated back when I was in middle school listening to really sad songs after a breakup. So now I know I'm completely normal, so appreciate that. And thank you all for being a part of this conversation. I'm Valencia Culbreth. I'm with the Denver Library. And before we wrap up, I want to share a few things about how you can stay connected and continue to explore these types of really, really important topics. If you enjoyed today's event, just as I have, I invite you to check out One Book, One Denver. It's our citywide reading program that brings together people through books and shared experiences. We also hold lots of author talks like this one. We do this year round. Many of them are free and open to the public. So, and of course, for those of you that are supporting teens while you're here today, whether you're a parent, you're an educator, you're a counselor, our library offers a wide range of mental health resources, from curated book lists to free digital content. We have community partnerships. So don't forget to explore all of those things that are available to you. And also, we do have a new reimagined teen space here at the library. So when you get a chance, please do absolutely check that out. It was designed just for teens with teen input, so it's super cool. Again, thank you again for joining us today and for supporting the library. If you have a VIP ticket, we invite you to stay for the reception, and that'll be upstairs in our newly redesigned teen library. So thank you. We hope to see you all again soon.